So who are you?
Gerry Gaffney. I manage the business for Altium in the US.
And what is Altium?
Altium's a really interesting company. It's an organisation that's been around for about 20 years, but over the last 5-6 years, really beginning to take the direction of electronics and how we enable engineers in exciting new directions, so they can be much more effective.
Now this is going to be a different kind of interview for me because I usually am talking to some web startup. Like I was an hour ago talking to some web startup that's doing something cool, but you're changing engineering practices, right?
Fundamentally changing them, actually. You would say putting them on their head relative to the traditional way of doing it. So as opposed to considering it, discrete silos, we're really looking at the overall process.
Hold on a second, because this projector's making noise. Is there any way I can turn that off?
Yeah.
Cool.
Just
Yeah, it's making lots of fan noise.
Really looking at the overall process of electronics design, from concept all the way to actually manufacturing something.
Okay.
It's like that camera that we're looking at the minute.
So give me a sense, because people around the world who are watching this have no clue what you're talking about and
I'll draw it up on the board for you.
Sure.
Okay, let's try and do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I just use this here, in the past, if you look at the way that electronics were done, it was all in silos because you had specialisms.
Right.
Okay, and it was very much focused on the hardware side of things. That was why people bought products. So they bought computers for the processor that was in it.
Yeah.
It was the different interfaces like a USB connection. They were all exciting things for people as they evolved. So putting that into a hardware was, you develop kind of a schematic board, right? A schematic for a board.
Yeah.
You would then try lay it out. You might have to fit it into something, a case like your camera. So that would be the mechanical CAD side of things.
Yeah.
Okay. All this data would have different languages and so libraries associated with it. So you'd have to manage the libraries. You'd have to try and communicate that across the organization. And so you'd have maybe considerations around document management.
Yeah.
And then you have different pieces of the architecture itself. So you've got things like FPGAs, which are devices that you can put at the heart of a system to kind of be the intelligence of that system. Yeah. So we'll call that just kind of programmable devices.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the problem with all of this is that although the tools that these guys, all different types of engineering teams use, have been automated over the past 20 years, what has not happened is the handoffs between them, which all need to happen to make a product work. That hasn't been automated. That hasn't been considered. And so when you think about it, you see information being transferred around the organization, either vocally, in meetings, maybe emails, SharePoint,
Wiki, or maybe
spreadsheets, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But what happens is when you're developing a product, there's a ton of inefficiency in that process. And so what Altium does is address all of that within one product, one single database at that project level. So that ultimately you can track everything, you can reuse all of that design IP, and so what you can do is very quickly target a product to a new marketplace. And when you do that, the power of that proposition is enormous for enterprises and for engineers.
So who is this aimed at?
We have about 40,000 customers worldwide at this point in time.
But people who run supply chains, people who run design teams?
Engineers, mechanical CAD engineers, hardware engineers, FPGA engineers. There's also the software side of it. If you look at why people buy products today, they don't buy it so much for the hardware that's in there. Okay? That's why that story is less exciting. What they do is they buy it like an iPhone. Why do people queue around the corner for an iPhone when it comes out? It's because of the applications on it.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of an electronic product, that's the critical path.
Yeah.
If you look here, I just put up, an embedded design, 10 steps. I won't go through them all, but for anybody, you can see it all the way through. Well, the problem with this situation is that if you're writing software, you've got to get through steps 1 to 8 before you can test it on that hardware that I just showed you. And so what you need is a platform that interacts real time so that you can start writing your code right up here, knowing it's going to work on that hardware platform from day one. You can show it to your customer and he can say to you, look, actually I'd like it to do A, B or C. And you can iterate that very, very quickly. we've produced a platform which has a single database, so it can capture all the enterprise data, and you can really leverage that across the organization. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And then we've built a hardware platform that interacts real time with our software, which allows you to prototype very, very early in the process,
Yeah.
develop your firmware code, but know that at the push of a button, you can then take that product to manufacture. It retains all the integrity to be able to manufacture.
Now,
So really speeding up the process.
this is pretty interesting because it sort of matches what I saw over in China, which was they're now designing product, building product, marketing product, taking orders, and shipping it right to your house, right from a factory in China.
Right.
It's no middleman anymore, and it's very, very efficient, and they can turn things around very quickly.
Right.
So the engineering team here, who's coming up with a new product, like the Chumby, for instance, can use your software to turn around ideas and get funding for those ideas, and then go to a factory in China and get it built
right. Absolutely right.
in a much shorter time frame.
So the power here of this single database is that we track all the revisions
Yeah.
to a design. My writing's not great here. But that's ECO, all the engineering change orders. So just imagine you're a startup company in the Valley, medical devices, right? You want to develop some new camera for whatever. And the secret sauce is the application that will run on it ultimately for whoever is the community that you're trying to address. You want to get some VC funding, you want to very rapidly get to a prototype. You then get out in front of your user base to try and establish, is this a product that's really going to stick?
Yeah.
You want that prototype to be there very, very early. You want to be able to adjust your secret sauce in effect very quickly for your potential end customers.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to show that to your investors at the same time so you can continue to have your cash flow.
Absolutely.
But once you've done that, you then want to be able to push that button so that you can leverage your supply chain in China as an example to do it. Altium has the largest installed base of users in the world in China for electronic software. We have about 350,000 users. Our business is doubling every year there.
Yeah.
And one of the powers of this revision and ECO management capability within our single database and reporting is that you can ultimately communicate and collaborate on a global basis. Nobody has really considered this as a process. They've considered it within how do you optimize mechanical CAD, how do you optimize library management, how do you optimize hardware. This is where Cadence and Mentor, as an example, live in these kind of areas.
Yeah.
But the overall process hasn't moved out of the 20th century into the
Why
challenges
today?
that we face.
So why today? Why not in a year? Why not a year ago? Why? What about the world caused you guys to do this today?
Well, I think the company's been radical from the outset. So our CEO was the founder of the company 20 years ago. His name's Nick Martin, and he just saw this picture happening. His sense was that you had an industry really which was maturing so rapidly. I mean, let's be honest. The electronic business has kind of matured for people in their own lifetime.
Yeah.
It's gone from nothing, and the challenge ultimately is that everything that was done was based upon discrete skill sets in getting a product out the door. But ultimately what happened was that people's buying choices changed. They valued it differently to just looking at the hardware and really
Yeah.
wanting that software side of it. And so what he decided to do was to commit himself to enabling that vision. So the company went public in 2000. Over the last 5 years, we've invested about $100 million in our platform.
Wow.
So this is a technology that's very robust. We have all kinds of companies using it. Give an example. Tesla, who developed the energy efficient, high performance electric car, they use Altium for this kind of process.
Yeah.
If you look at iRobot, who have a lot of the military robots deployed out in the Middle East.
They also are the ones who make the vacuum cleaners, right?
And that's a prime example of reusing.
A lot of people don't know they make military
That's
robots.
right.
They know
The
the
Roomba.
little
It's
the
the
Roomba thing. Yeah.
But that's the interesting point about it. You take a company there, right, very successful in one space, now translating that to a different market, and they're reusing everything that they're doing as part of that process.
Yeah.
And they're able to do it because it's all captured in one single database.
Interesting. Is anybody trying to do this as well as you guys, or do you have competition, or is it?
What you have is you have very traditional communities still trying to iteratively improve the challenge in each of those silos.
Yeah.
Or what you have is a situation where there are major players, as say in the PLM space, who are trying to have an approach which encompasses some of these elements. But the problem that they have is, from an electronic design perspective, they cannot retain the integrity of the data all the way to manufacture because it's not where their background has been.
Yeah.
It's almost garbage in, garbage out to an extent on the data side, right?
Yeah.
And so what we've got really here is we've developed from the fact that more and more products and more markets need an electronic component to it, even if that's not your core focus of your product.
Yep.
You need it. It's all about a vision of radically
Yeah, even like the automotive industry,
absolutely huge.
20 years ago,
Yeah.
we had spark plugs and a carburetor, right?
That's it.
And
That's
now we have
exactly it. That's exactly
now we
it.
have a computer running everything.
That's right. I mean, I don't know what the statistic is, but every car has something like 60 processors in it, and that's a huge move away from where we were 20 years ago. When you go into a car room and you ask about a car, they talk to you about the entertainment system. They don't talk to you about the seats look this way, or you can necessarily drive 0 to 60. That's not why people buy anymore. But same type of thing, and it's all developed from the point of view of being easy to use, deployable.
Yeah.
So the vision that we have as a company is that everybody in that design community contributing to the product will have an ability to have access to this technology at a price point that's available to the enterprise.
Yeah.
For most organizations, what you're talking about is needing to bolt different things together, and then ultimately doing that through some very heavy investment from professional services, consulting services. A lot of organizations cannot afford to do that.
Yeah.
And so
Now, usually I talk to startups or small companies. I mean, Facebook is a big company on my
Right.
usual list, right? They have 700 people. Are you seeing any startups that would want to talk to you, or is this mostly for a bigger concern that has hundreds of engineers and
it applies to all types. So the reality of it is, we start with very young companies like Telsa. When we started with those guys, very small organization.
Yeah.
We ResMed's another organization that we started off with from a very small point of view. They were in the medical side doing sleep monitoring.
Yeah.
So their application is about monitoring how you stop snoring.
Yeah.
But you clearly need an electronic component to deliver that to the market. Same type of thing. It's enabling those type of guys. As those guys grow with those disruptive applications, clearly Altium's technology follows as part of that. But we also have some major semiconductor organizations.
Yeah.
We've got one in the Valley, analog and power side, and they actually leverage this platform all the way into their FAE organization.
What's that? FAE?
Their field application guys.
Okay.
So if you can imagine, their challenge in their business is winning more share of the components in a system. And their field application engineers in the past would have a very passive, technically doing evaluations. Well, they've got very proactive. They leverage it into their web bench interface. So Altium is the engine that powers an engineer going onto their web portal and being able to do designs live on the web portal. Okay, and also take those test designs and go out to a customer and showcase all of the components so that they can win more slots in that product.
So where do we learn more about Altium and what you guys are doing?
Worldwidealtium.com is our website.
Okay.
I'm sure Janice can also help point you in the right direction with some of the other media contacts too.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Great.